Hello everyone, it's Richard here again. Hope you can hear me okay and see me okay and sitting down comfortably because this is the second installment of the critical book. It's a chapter called The Betrayal. It's my highlights again. It's quite a long video. It's actually 5 chapters, so 5 videos I think. So it's quite an effort for me, and I hope to do these more frequently, but I've been struggling recently, so I hope you forgive me for that. It's sporadic videos. I'm not doing a schedule yet. Just can't cope with that. But this is the book. So The Betrayal. The NHS is collapsing all around us, and patients are coming to harm. And the question that a lot of people are asking at the moment is why? Why are so many people coming to harm? Why has this been allowed to happen? Why have things got so bad? And the answer in a nutshell that successive governments have been tasked with running the NHS according to the principles written in its constitution, and they have failed to adhere to these principles. This catastrophe hasn't just been caused by the current politicians but by those who have come before them as well. Politicians have power over decisions that impact on the running of the NHS, for example the budgets made available to it, and politicians also make decisions concerning the long-term trajectory of the health service. They draw up legislation and pushes through Parliament to make changes in the way that it is structured and functions. Because there is a clearly stated NHS constitution that sets out the aims of our public healthcare system, our politicians should be governed and directed in their decision making by these objectives of delivering a healthcare service that provides comprehensive care, equitable care, and care that is free at the point of access to everyone. These principles should be front and centre at all times, and they should form a mission statement, a manifesto, holding the government accountable and keeping the project on track. But this has not been the case. Politicians have been able, over the NHS's long tenure, to make decisions that deviate enormously from its founding principles, and a lot of decisions, large and small, over the years have led to where we are today. The structure of the service has been fragmented enormously. Resources have been starved and funding has been cut. All of this has led to the collapsing of the NHS. Sorry, I'm just checking my notes again. Okay. Ultimately, the amalgamation of the decisions has led to disaster. We see the evidence all around us. If we want to understand why the NHS is in its current state, why the situation has been able to occur, it is important to consider the factors influencing politicians' decision making, to consider what is leading them to make decisions that don't follow the NHS aims, don't place parents front and centre, and don't keep the car running safely. The car is a metaphor. And the most obvious place to start is politicians' personal political ideologies. After all, one would expect they were largely motivated by their own beliefs about the provision of a public healthcare system. It makes sense to start at the top, so let's consider the ideology of our Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Sunak has openly said in recent months that people cannot expect the state to fix every problem. He has also put forward proposals to start charging NHS patients for missed GP appointments. The proposal has since been dropped when Sunak declared that it was not the right time for the initiative to be started. Both of these things are a huge red flag because Sunak, as leader, is ultimately tasked with managing the resources of the NHS along with other public services. We learned about Sunak's political ideology during the chaotic summer months of 2022, following the demise of Boris Johnson's premiership. Sunak was locked in a head-to-head bid for the leadership of the Conservative Party, and thus to become Prime Minister, against his political rival Liz Truss. During this period, a frantic campaign that saw hastily put together hustings across the UK, and Sunak preparing campaign packs for journalists who include Ready for Rishi, sunscreen and miniature cans of Sprite. Both politicians were very vocal in their support of Thatcherism. They competed in putting forward very similar political rhetoric about minimising state involvement in citizens' lives, lowering taxes, and pulling back from the provisions of the welfare state. The ideology of those politicians most closely involved with the NHS has always attracted a great deal of curiosity, specifically because of the power that senior politicians have over the health service and its direction of travel. As our health secretary between 2010 and 2017, the longest serving health secretary we've ever had, Jeremy Hunt has been the recipient of a great deal of such curiosity. Many commentators have drawn attention to Hunt's involvement in writing a 2005 policy book entitled Direct Democracy, an Agenda for the New Model Party, which comprised the writings of a group of Conservative MPs including Hunt. The book contained a chapter that provided a plan to replace the NHS with a health insurance system, including the private sector. Hunt has since attempted to distance himself from this rhetoric, claiming that he did not write the chapter about the NHS. However, the book was presented as a whole, without denoting the authors of each chapter, and Hunt was declared to be one of the authors of the book. As a keen observer of Hunt's actions for almost a decade now, I find his ideology difficult to ascertain. He was Health Secretary during a period that saw unfair contracts being imposed upon junior doctors, the stopping of student nurse bursaries, significant staff pay freezes and bed cuts. But since leaving his post as Health Secretary, has been a key advocate of patient safety and has made some extremely helpful suggestions about the future direction of the service. Frankly, many of the doctors I speak to feel perplexed about this. Hunt seemed to successfully rebrand himself as an advocate of the NHS by the time he became Chancellor of the Exchequer in autumn 2022. An extraordinary feat given the low opinions many doctors had held about him previously. But he is yet to take action on the NHS pensions crisis, an issue he is well aware of and has spoken publicly about. He is pushing some senior doctors into cutting their hours because of the outlandish tax they are being charged on their pension contributions. In many cases, more than 100% to take on extra shifts, meaning they are effectively paying to go to work during the worst NHS crisis we have ever experienced. I have noticed during the time that I have campaigned on issues relating to the NHS that the engagement we receive from MPs changes significantly over time. Political parties create their own objectives and long-term goals and messaging, and this can sometimes hamper politicians' ability to take action that will support the NHS, regardless of their personal beliefs. During the pandemic, EveryDoctor began to invite all MPs to regular parliamentary briefings about various topics, bringing frontline doctors into contact with politicians to explain their concerns and to help lobby for changes that would protect staff and their patients too. During that period, a handful of Conservative politicians engaged in what we were doing, had a telephone call with us and decided to our campaign pledge. But for the most part, when we sent MPs letters, we received stock responses or slightly altered stock responses from Conservative politicians, or nothing at all. These stock responses are written by central communications teams, and they will often not directly answer the questions asked by us or by constituents who are taking part in the campaign. They will more often than not be used as an opportunity for MPs to parrot whatever messaging the political parties hoping to disseminate about a topic at a given moment. This is frustrating at the best of times, but it is particularly galling to receive these responses during the middle of a pandemic, when every day counted and we were desperately hoping that politicians would step up and take action to help make changes needed to safeguard the lives of NHS staff members and their vulnerable patients. During the pandemic, I found it much easier to work with politicians from the other political parties who seemed to have much more freedom to engage in our campaign in ways that were closely aligned with causes they felt strongly about, or issues that were strongly affecting their constituents when they wanted to change. With the help of a large number of MPs from various political parties, we were pivotal in securing some policy changes, including provision of priority first dose vaccines for frontline health and social care workers, and death in service benefits for the family members of frontline staff who had tragically died of COVID-19 after catching the virus in their workplaces. The role of the political opposition is enormously important. It is extremely disappointing to see them focusing on the manifestos for the next election while this humanitarian crisis unfolds. Although it is the government that makes decisions concerning the NHS, assessing budgets and so forth, the opposition has a key part to play too. The present administration has a great deal of autonomy due to its commanding such a large majority in the House of Commons. But the role of the opposition, as always, is to hold the government to account. The political landscape is ever changing, and the landscape determines campaigners' ability to effect change. The state of a political party, how organised its messaging is, how much pressure the central organisation is putting on individual MPs to toe the party line, can influence campaigners to lobby for policy changes. Can influence campaigners' ability to lobby for policy changes. And the current situation is affecting the NHS in very negative ways. Labour have organised themselves. They are pitching their manifesto for the next general election instead of reacting agilely and holding the current government to account about a situation that is costing many lives every day. In the absence of robust, stringent accountability, Sunak and his government's actions are largely going unchallenged and unchecked. In November 22, he appointed a private healthcare lobbyist called Bill Morgan as a health policy advisor in number 10 Downing Street. In December, he was meeting with 7 of the bosses of the UK's biggest private healthcare companies to discuss how to tackle the NHS backlog. The NHS is a vote winner, and politicians use associations with the brand and promises to improve it to attract the support of the electorate. This is not a new situation, but it is becoming increasingly apparent as time has gone on and the service has deteriorated. In 2015, David Cameron said shortly after the election that the NHS will be in safe hands for every generation to come. Following the Brexit vote, there was a speculation about whether Theresa May's government would deliver fully or partially on the pledge that had come from the Vote Leave campaign of delivering £350 million per week in NHS funding. Jeremy Hunt, then Health Secretary, promised in 2015 that the number of GPs would increase by 5,000 by 2020. Boris Johnson then made another pledge with his general election manifesto in 2019 that he would increase the number of GPs by 6,000 by 2025. Numbers of GPs have in fact fallen every single year since Jeremy Hunt made that pledge, and when Rishi Sunak took over as Prime Minister in autumn 2022 and set out his commitments, the pledge to increase GP numbers was notably absent. We know from the state of the service currently that these promises have not been upheld, and it is difficult to view these instances as anything other than clever politicking. After all, large numbers of the public cast their vote during a general election based on the promises made in the party manifestos, and people care deeply about the NHS. If we can't trust what the politicians are saying, if the promises simply don't come to pass, where does that leave us? The situation feels particularly precarious right now because things are in such peril. Promises from politicians going forward won't be able to use grandiose statements such as Cameron's, and any who, like Matt Hancock, attempted to wear an NHS badge in public today and claim their support for the NHS service will probably face considerable ire. Things are disparaging and declining very quickly as these hollow promises have caused the public to place its faith in the wrong people. Alongside the manifesto promises, grand statements to secure votes to propel a politician into power, senior politicians in recent years have also made what feel like increasingly chaotic and inappropriate decisions regarding the NHS, the future of the service, and where the money should be spent. The most perplexing development to my mind is the rise of the NHS volunteer. Personally, I don't agree there should be any volunteers with the NHS, because it's an essential public service and I'd worry about the sustainability and possible exploitation of such arrangements, where a person is working on behalf of the government but isn't being paid to do so. The phenomenon of NHS volunteers hasn't come out of nowhere. It has, however, been expanded like never before in the last couple of years through initiatives started by the current government. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Matt Hancock was pivotal in bringing together what he referred to as a volunteer army, including some 750,000 people who signed up within days to help vulnerable people. Later on, when vaccines had become available, the Sun newspaper ran a campaign called Jab's Army, seeking 50,000 volunteers to help as stewards at vaccination centres. One could argue that during an unprecedented national crisis, the involvement of volunteers was a positive thing. Undoubtedly, they made a huge impact, even if some people found the messaging surrounding the recruitment jingoistic and inappropriate. The situation hasn't stopped there, however. Sajid Javid, who was Health Secretary until the summer of 2 Health Secretaries ago, began asking people to sign up to a scheme as an NHS reservist in March 2022. The scheme essentially seems to provide basic training for a large pool of people who are then employed in 0 hours contracts to work in supporting roles at a time of high pressure. The NHS in England is missing almost 10% of the entire staff workforce currently. Politicians should be focused on employing permanent staff and supporting them properly to build sustainability within our health service, instead of creating a territorial army of NHS helpers in a bizarre echo of military service. Politicians currently continue to press on with an agenda that is not serving patients' best interest. It became increasingly clear over the past 18 months that the situation has come to a head, and yet still politicians seem unwilling to tackle the situation head on. In June 2022, Sajid Javid claimed that the NHS doesn't need any more money, and Steve Barclay briefed the Health Secretary during the demise of Boris Johnson before taking on the job again from Theresa Coffey when Liz Truss crashed the UK economy, has similarly claimed the NHS doesn't need cash. Concerningly, the leader of the Labour Party, Keir Starmer, also sees promoting policies that do not tackle the government crisis and not serve either the public or the continuation of the NHS in the long term. Starmer has a strong lead in opinion polls at present, and many people believe that he will win the next election. He has been consistently vocal in his criticism of how the current government is handling the NHS, and was insistent during his campaign to become the electoral leader of the Labour Party that he wanted to do things differently. Among the pledges he put forward as a membership of the Labour Party was that, if he were to be elected as Prime Minister, he would remove the private outsourcing of services within the NHS. This was met with huge approval from many Labour Party members, and many of those NHS supporters who I speak to online every day voted for Starmer as leader, specifically because of this pledge. It is enormously important to them. It was extremely troubling for many, therefore, when Starmer recently said in an interview when there is some private provision within the NHS, and would like to have to continue with that. Some have suggested that Starmer believes that breaking his election promise would count for him to win a general election. His Shadow Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, has also recently explained that he will seize the role for the private sector as one of the levers of tackling the long NHS waiting lists. Many members of the public are becoming unhappy with the politicians' behaviour. There have been several prominent examples of members of the public holding them to account when they visit NHS facilities. In October 2022, a hospital patient challenged Rishi Sunak over nurses' pay. In December 2022, during a hospital visit, Health Secretary Steve Barclay was confronted by a mother of a sick girl who told him that the NHS staff are worked to the bone, and the government is doing terrible damage to families on waiting lists. Because of the power that is placed in the hands of politicians, particularly at times like this, when the ruling party commands a large majority, politicians hold great power over the direction of the NHS. This has enabled them to use the service as a vote winner, a badge of honour, even as they take steps to damage the service. Their failure to stick to the NHS constitution and take decisions in the best interest of patients is clear, but things are changing, and it feels like there's going to be a wide-scale reckoning of their actions. That's the end. So I hope you found that useful. That's a bit tedious, but it's my contribution. I'm just hoping it makes a difference. So feel free to press the like button on YouTube and subscribe and spread the word and say hello and things and comment. Feedback, please. Yes, useful. Great. And I'll see you later, I hope. Bye.